I should have known better than to let Sarah set me up on a blind date for Valentine's Day. But after 3 years of being single, I figured, what did I have to lose? He's perfect for you, she insisted. Trust me on this one. The cafe she picked was one of those Instagram-worthy spots downtown, all exposed brick and hanging plants. I arrived 10 minutes early, fidgeting with my coffee cup while I waited. When he walked in, tall, well-dressed, with a disarming smile, I thought maybe Sarah was right after all. "Emma," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Michael." The first half hour went smoothly enough. He was articulate, funny even, but something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. "I notice you still drink your coffee with 3 sugars, he said casually. "Some things never change, huh?" I paused mid-sip. "Did Sarah tell you that?" He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Must have. The conversation continued, but my mind kept catching on little details. He mentioned my cat's name before I'd brought up having a pet. He knew about the promotion I'd gotten last month, something I'd only posted about in my private Instagram stories. "That mural you posed in front of last weekend really suited your blue dress," he said, stirring his untouched coffee. The colors complemented each other perfectly. My throat went dry. I hadn't shared that photo anywhere. I'd taken it, decided against posting it, and deleted it. "Have we met before?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. His smile widened. "You really don't remember me, Emma? I'm hurt. We used to be such good friends in high school. AP Chemistry? You used to wear that silver butterfly necklace every day." The room tilted sideways as recognition hit me. Michael. Quiet, intense Michael from junior year, who'd left school suddenly after his increasingly desperate attempts at friendship had made me uncomfortable. "I've been keeping up with your life," he continued, leaning forward. "Watching you grow into such an amazing woman. I always knew we'd find our way back to each other. When I saw Sarah's post about setting her friend up for Valentine's Day, I knew it was fate. It wasn't hard to convince her we'd be perfect together." I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. "I need to go. I'll walk you home," he said, already gathering his things. "You're still in the brick building on Maple, right? Apartment 3B? The one with the little herb garden on the windowsill?" I'd never posted my address online. Never. "Don't," I managed, backing away. "Don't come near me." But that night, as I double-checked my locked windows and doors, I heard a knock. Through the peephole, I saw Michael, still wearing that same pleasant smile. "Emma?" he called softly. "I brought you flowers. Yellow daisies, still your favorite, right? I've seen them in all your spring photos." He pressed his hand against the door. "We have so much catching up to do. 10 years is such a long time to wait." I called the police with shaking hands, finally understanding that this wasn't just a bad date or an awkward reunion. This was the beginning of something that had been building for years, one silent online view at a time, while I'd lived my life completely unaware of the eyes watching my every move. As I waited for help to arrive, his voice drifted through the door. "Don't worry, Emma. I saved everything. Every post, every photo, every little glimpse into your life. I'll show you just how perfect we are for each other. We have all the time in the world." My heart nearly stopped when I heard the key turning in the lock. The spare key. The one I kept under the potted plant in the hallway. How could I have been so careless? The door began to open, and I bolted for my bedroom, slamming and locking the door just as his footsteps entered my apartment. "Emma, don't be like this," Michael called out, his voice eerily calm. "I've waited so long. Do you know how many nights I've stayed up scrolling through your life? How many times I've driven by just to see your lights on? I even followed you to Paris last summer. Remember that cafe on Montmartre where you wrote in your journal for hours? You looked so beautiful in the morning light." I pressed myself against the wall, phone clutched to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. The 911 operator was still on the line, whispering that units were 2 minutes away. "I have to show you something," Michael continued. I heard rustling, then something heavy hitting my coffee table. I made a scrapbook. Every post, every location check-in, every friend tagged. I've mapped out every place you've been for the last decade. I know you better than anyone, Emma. Better than you know yourself. His footsteps approached my bedroom door. "Remember when you broke up with David 3 years ago? I was there at the bar that night, watching you cry into your wine. I wanted so badly to comfort you, but I knew it wasn't time yet. I had to wait until you were ready to see how perfect we could be." The door handle jiggled. "Emma, please, don't make me break this door down. You know I never hurt you. I love you too much." Just then, red and blue lights flooded through my window, reflecting off the walls like a grotesque light show. Michael went quiet. "Police! Open up!" What happened next was a blur of splintering wood, shouted commands, and the metallic click of handcuffs. As they led Michael away, I saw what he'd left on my coffee table: a massive leather-bound book, stuffed with printed photos, screenshots, journal entries about me. 10 years of my life, curated through the eyes of someone who'd turned friendship into obsession. Later, as I gave my statement to the detective, she showed me what they'd found in Michael's car: a bag packed with rope, duct tape, and printed directions to a cabin 3 hours away. "He had plans for you," she said gently. "You're lucky you recognized the signs when you did." Sarah called me the next day, crying hysterically. She'd never known Michael before. He'd manipulated his way into her social circle months ago, carefully crafting his identity to become the perfect match she'd set me up with. He'd played a long game, and I'd nearly lost. That was 6 months ago. I've since moved apartments, deleted my social media, and started therapy. Sometimes I still catch myself looking over my shoulder, wondering if there's someone watching, waiting. But I'm learning to trust my instincts again, that gut feeling that told me something wasn't right. The detective called last week. Michael took a plea deal. He'll be in prison for the next 5 years, with a lifetime restraining order after that. But the hardest part wasn't the legal proceedings or even the fear. It was realizing that while I'd been living my life in the open, sharing my joys and sorrows with the world, someone had been twisting every posted moment into something dark and possessive. It happened during my senior year of high school, and even now, months later, I still can't believe how everything unfolded. It started on Valentine's Day. I was staying late after school to finish up some lab work in Miss Clement's chemistry class. She was usually pretty chill, the kind of teacher who actually makes science interesting and treats us like adults. She'd been teaching at Riverside High for about 5 years, and everyone liked her. But that afternoon, something felt off. She kept hovering around her desk, reorganizing papers that were already organized, barely making eye contact when I asked questions about the lab. Just before I packed up to leave, she called me over. "Kyle, wait a moment." Her voice had this weird tremor I'd never heard before. She handed me a red envelope. "Happy Valentine's Day." I stood there holding the envelope, not sure what to think. Teachers sometimes gave out candy or cards to the whole class on Valentine's Day, but this was different. I was the only student there, and this was a proper greeting card envelope, not some classroom Valentine. "Thanks, Miss Clements," I mumbled, shoving it in my backpack. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. When I got to my car, I pulled out the envelope. Inside was a handmade card with intricate paper flowers glued to the front. The message inside made my stomach drop. "Kyle, you brighten every one of my days. Will you be my Valentine, Andrea?" Andrea, her first name. Not Miss Clements, just Andrea. I crumpled up the card and threw it in my back seat, trying to convince myself it was just a weird mistake. Maybe she was lonely or something. But deep down, I knew this wasn't normal. The next few weeks, things got progressively weirder. I'd catch her staring at me during class with this intense look, only to quickly glance away when I noticed. She started finding reasons to keep me after class, asking questions about my college plans, concerns about my latest lab report, even though I had an A in her class. Then I started noticing her car. At first, I thought it was just coincidence that I kept seeing her blue Honda Civic around town. But then I spotted it parked a block away from the coffee shop where I worked part-time. Another time, it was in the parking lot of the movie theater where I was hanging out with friends. Once, I swear I saw it drive past my house at night. I tried to brush it off, but the knot in my stomach kept growing. I started taking different routes home, varying my schedule, looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. The breaking point came when my best friend Jake mentioned something that chilled me to my core. "Hey, isn't that your chemistry teacher's car?" he asked one Saturday morning as we were leaving basketball practice. Sure enough, her Civic was parked across the street from the gym. "Dude, this is getting weird," Jake said. "Didn't something happen with her and that kid who graduated last year? What was his name, Marcus?" I went home and started digging. Through social media and old school newspaper articles, I found out that Marcus had suddenly transferred schools in the middle of his senior year. There were rumors, but nothing concrete, until I found his Reddit account. Marcus had posted his story anonymously, but the details matched perfectly. Miss Clements had become obsessed with him, showing up everywhere he went, sending him inappropriate messages, even threatening to hurt herself when he tried to distance himself. He'd eventually reported her, but she'd managed to convince the administration it was all a misunderstanding. His parents had moved him to another school to get him away from her. I felt sick. All those moments I'd brushed off as coincidence suddenly formed a terrifying pattern. but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. It was a Sunday evening when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. My blood ran cold as I read it. "Kyle, I can't hide my feelings anymore. You're all I think about. We're meant to be together. I know you feel it too. I've watched how your eyes light up in class, how your hand brushes through your hair when you're concentrating on a problem. I've seen you at the coffee shop, at the movies, at basketball practice. You're perfect. Please don't push me away like Marcus did." I immediately called my parents and showed them everything. The Valentine's card I'd kept as evidence, screenshots of the message, Marcus's Reddit post. They contacted the police that night. The investigation revealed just how deep Miss Clement's obsession went. She had hundreds of photos of me on her phone, taken without my knowledge. She'd created multiple fake social media accounts to follow me. She'd even made a copy of my house key somehow. They found it in her apartment, along with a shrine-like collection of things she'd stolen from my desk during class. She was arrested the next day at school. The whole thing became this huge scandal in our small town. More former students came forward with similar stories, though none had escalated as far as what happened with Marcus and me. I'm in college now, trying to move past all of this. But sometimes, I still catch myself looking over my shoulder, checking to see if anyone's watching me. Miss Clements is in jail awaiting trial, and I know I'm safe, but the experience changed me. It taught me that sometimes the people we trust can be hiding the darkest secrets. If you're listening to this and something similar is happening to you, don't wait. Don't make excuses. Document everything and tell someone you trust. These situations don't get better on their own. They only escalate. I found the first letter on the 10th of February tucked neatly under my apartment door. It was a simple white envelope, my name written on the front in black ink. At first, I assumed it was from management, maybe a notice about maintenance or a rent reminder. But when I opened it, my heart did a little flutter. "You are more beautiful than you realize. The way your eyes light up when you laugh, the way you hum when you're deep in thought, I notice it all. I only wish I had the courage to tell you in person. Happy early Valentine's Day, my love." No signature, no return address, just those words. I actually laughed at first, thinking maybe one of my friends was playing a joke on me. But I'd just moved to Chicago last year, and most of my close friends still lived back home in Ohio. Who could have left this? The idea of a secret admirer was kind of sweet though. I wasn't seeing anyone, and Valentine's Day had always been kind of depressing for me. So for a brief moment, I let myself enjoy the mystery. Then the second letter came. This time, the envelope was left on my kitchen counter. That stopped me cold. I lived alone. My door had been locked. I double-checked it every night before bed. There was no way someone could have just slipped it under the door and have it land on the counter. I hesitated before opening it, my stomach twisting. "The red dress you wore last night, it suited you perfectly. You should wear red more often. It brings out the warmth in your skin." I felt ice creep up my spine. I had worn a red dress yesterday. Not for anything special, just a random choice. I'd gone to the grocery store, walked around a bit, but I hadn't noticed anyone watching me. I immediately texted my best friend, Kara. "Tell me you're the one leaving these notes, please," I said. "What notes?" she replied. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to her. She replied almost instantly. "That's not funny, Em. Where did you find that?" "On my counter." "Did you leave your door unlocked?" she asked. I thought hard. No, I was sure I had locked it. I checked my windows and they were still latched. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I had left the door unlocked without realizing. Maybe a neighbor thought this was a weird joke. But deep down, I knew. Someone had been inside my apartment. I started noticing little things after that. My coffee mug wasn't where I left it. A drawer was slightly open when I knew I had shut it. My shoes were moved a few inches from their usual spot by the door. None of it was enough to prove someone had been inside, but it was enough to make me paranoid. Another letter came 2 days later, on Valentine's morning. This one was on my pillow when I woke up. I barely breathed as I unfolded it. "You look so peaceful when you sleep. I wish I could hold you, just once. Happy Valentine's Day, my love." My hands trembled as I read it. Someone had been in my apartment. While I was sleeping, I wanted to scream. Instead, I jumped out of bed and checked every inch of my apartment. Under the bed, in the closet, behind the shower curtain, nothing. I called my landlord, Mr. Dawson. "Someone's been breaking into my apartment," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed. "That's unusual. There haven't been any reports of break-ins." "Well, Someone is getting inside. I need the locks changed." There was a pause. "I can do that," he finally said. "I'll come by later today." I felt at ease a little, but I was still too shaken to enjoy it. I just needed my locks changed. That night, I pushed a chair in front of my bedroom door, just in case. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up to the sound of breathing. Not my own, not my upstairs neighbor's muffled noises. This was deep, raspy breathing right outside my bedroom door. I froze, my heart hammering so loudly I thought whoever was out there could hear it. I stared at the door, watching the shadows beneath it, waiting for movement. For what felt like forever, I didn't move. Neither did the breathing. Then, after an agonizing few minutes, the sound retreated. I listened as soft footsteps moved away, followed by the unmistakable click of my front door closing. I waited another 10 minutes before I moved. When I finally gathered the courage to check, my front door was locked. But there was another letter. This time, it wasn't on my counter or my pillow. It was in my hand. Like someone had gently placed it there while I slept. I nearly vomited. My hands shook violently as I unfolded the paper. "You're even more beautiful up close. I could have kissed you. Maybe next time." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. My landlord didn't show up to change the locks, as he said, and I didn't bother calling him again. Instead, I bought a small camera and tucked it in my bookshelf, angled toward the front door. That night, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump, but morning came without incident. When I checked the footage, my blood ran cold. At 3:07 a.m., my front door unlocked. A man stepped inside. My landlord. He moved slowly, deliberately. He walked straight to my bedroom door and stood there for a full 5 minutes, just listening. Then, he pushed the door open. The camera didn't catch what happened inside my bedroom, but I didn't need it to. I knew. He had been standing over me, watching me sleep, placing the letter in my hand again. I didn't even read the letter. I immediately called the police. They arrested him that afternoon. Turns out, he had a master key to every apartment in the building. He'd been using it for years. He had dozens of letters saved on his computer, all written for me. Plans to escalate, plans to do worse things. He had even installed a small camera inside my room, hidden inside a vent, watching me, recording me. I moved out that same week. Even now, months later, I still wake up at 3:12 a.m., heart pounding, expecting to hear that breathing outside my door again. I should have known it was too good to be true. That's what everyone says after the fact, right? But when you're lonely and Valentine's Day is approaching, your judgment tends to get a little cloudy. I had been mindlessly swiping through dating apps for weeks, matching with nobody particularly interesting, when Gwen's profile stopped me in my tracks. Dark hair, bright eyes, and a smile that seemed to jump right off the screen. Her bio was witty without trying too hard. Something about being a professional coffee addict and amateur stargazer. In retrospect, it was perfectly crafted to seem authentic while revealing absolutely nothing. We matched on the 11th of February, just 3 days before Valentine's Day. She messaged first, which never happens to me. That hiking photo at Cascade Falls is amazing, though I bet you staged it just for your profile. I hadn't staged it, but I wasn't about to correct her. We fell into an easy conversation, the kind where you look up and realize 2 hours have passed. She was smart, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say. When she mentioned being new in town and not knowing many people, I felt that familiar surge of hope. Maybe this wouldn't be another lonely Valentine's Day after all. "It's kind of last minute," she wrote on the 13th, "but would you want to meet up tomorrow night? I know this great little place called the Copper Lantern. It's quiet, intimate, perfect for actually getting to know someone." I googled the place. It existed, but barely. A hole-in-the-wall bar in a part of town I didn't know well. The few reviews mentioned authentic atmosphere and hidden gem, which could mean either charming or sketchy, depending on your perspective. "Sounds perfect," I replied, ignoring the slight unease in my gut. After all, what kind of scammer would suggest a real established place? Valentine's Day arrived cold and drizzly. I spent way too long choosing a shirt and debating whether flowers would be too much. I decided against them. The Copper Lantern was exactly as advertised, tucked away on a side street, with a worn copper sign swinging gently in the wind. The surrounding businesses were all closed for the night, their darkened windows reflecting the bar's warm glow. Inside, the place was nearly empty, just a couple in a corner booth and an older man at the bar. The lighting was low, coming mostly from antique-looking lanterns on each table. It was atmospheric, I told myself, not creepy. Definitely atmospheric. Gwen was already there, sitting at a small table near the back. She looked exactly like her photos, which was both relieving and, somehow, slightly unsettling. Her smile was just as dazzling in person, and she stood to give me a quick hug. Her perfume was subtle, but intoxicating. "I'm so glad you found it," she said, gesturing for me to sit. "I already ordered us drinks. Hope you don't mind. They make this amazing signature cocktail here. A red flag, maybe, but I pushed the thought aside. She was being thoughtful, that's all. The drinks was something purple and sparkling in elegant glasses. It tasted sweet, with a complex flavor I couldn't quite identify. "It's their secret recipe," she said, watching me take a sip. "Good, right?" The conversation flowed as easily as it had online, but something felt off. She leaned in close, laughed at all my jokes, and kept steering the conversation back to personal details. Where I lived, my job, my routine. Her own answers to similar questions were vague, glossed over with another question or a light touch on my arm. About halfway through the drink, the room started to feel warmer. The lantern light seemed to streak and blur at the edges of my vision. I blinked hard, trying to focus on Gwen's face. "Are you feeling all right?" she asked, her concern not quite reaching her eyes. "Maybe some fresh air would help. There's a quiet alley just behind the bar where we could step out for a minute." That's when it hit me. The couple in the corner booth was gone. The old man at the bar too. The bartender was nowhere to be seen. Just Gwen and me, in this dimly lit room that suddenly felt more like a trap than a bar. "I think I should head home," I mumbled, standing up too quickly. The room tilted dangerously. "Let me help you," Gwen said, reaching for my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "You really don't look well." I jerked away from her, stumbling toward the door. Behind me, I heard her voice change, dropping its flirtatious warmth. "Don't be stupid about this. You can barely walk." She was right about that. Whatever was in that drink was hitting me hard. But fear is a powerful motivator, and adrenaline can temporarily override a lot of things, even what I'm pretty sure was some kind of sedative. I crashed through the front door into the cold night air. My vision was swimming, but I could hear footsteps behind me. Not just Gwen's, heavier ones too. Partners waiting outside. I didn't stop to find out. I ran. Not well and not in a straight line, but I ran. Down the empty street, past darkened storefronts, my heart pounding in my ears. I heard shouting behind me, but it grew fainter as I turned corner after corner, using parked cars and dumpsters for support. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I found a busy street. Cars, people, light, safety. I collapsed onto a bench outside a convenience store and called 911 with shaking hands. The police took my report seriously, especially when they learned about other similar cases in the area. Apparently, I wasn't the first person to be targeted by Gwen, just the first to get away before being robbed. They never caught her or her accomplices, but the dating app banned her profile. Small comfort, considering she probably had 10 more waiting to go. These days, I do a lot more research before meeting anyone from dating apps. I insist on busy, public places, and I never accept drinks I haven't watched being made. Some might call it paranoid, but I call it learning from experience. Every Valentine's Day, I think about Gwen and how differently that night could have ended. Sometimes I wonder if that was even her real name, or if anything she told me was true. But mostly, I'm just grateful for that moment of clarity that cut through the haze. That split second when instinct overrode politeness and told me to run.